The Layah Heilpern Show. BitMEX, the OG crypto derivatives platform and the best place to buy your Bitcoin.
Things really are just starting to heat up.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Layah Heilpern Show. I'm so excited for today because I have a guest that I know is going to provide so much value and you're absolutely going to love. Now, before I bring on my guest, I do want to let you know, as always, that this podcast is sponsored by BitMEX. So BitMEX is actually the OG crypto derivatives exchange and now has a spot exchange for you to buy and sell your Bitcoin and many different cryptocurrencies. Especially in this bear market, you do need a name that you can trust, and BitMEX sets the standard in reliability, performance, and transparency, and has proven itself through multiple market cycles and has stood the test of time, which is very important. Right now, BitMEX is actually celebrating the start of BitMEX Spot with $1 million in prizes to give away. So if you do want to enter, all you need to do is trade the equivalent of $250. So you can grab some Bitcoin for $250 during the crash. You can actually enter up to 25 times, and one lucky winner will even receive $500,000 in Bitcoin. So to sign up, I'm going to leave all the links in the description for you below. So if you do want to grab some Bitcoin during the dip, then now is a really great time. Now, before I bring on my guest, I do want to let you know that on this podcast, as always, we do bring you the highest quality content. We speak to some incredible guests. So please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss a video. So who is coming today? Well, joining me on the show today is a man that was previously the lead crisis negotiator for New York City's FBI division. He's the FBI lead international kidnapping negotiator. He teaches business negotiating at universities across the states. He's the founder and the CEO of the Black Swan Group and author of Never Split the Difference. If you don't know already, it is, of course, Chris Voss. Chris, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am happy to be here. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, such a pleasure. I'm so fascinated by your work. I've never spoken to a hostage negotiator before in my life.
Well, that's probably a good thing, right?
Absolutely, it is a good thing. So I'm really fascinated. I'm also fascinated by how transferable the skills apparently are. So we're going to get into all of that. But before we do, I'm really curious. What does it mean to be the lead FBI hostage negotiator? Can you explain what that even looks like?
Well, I was a lead international kidnapping negotiator. So, there was sort of a cadre of us having a variety of different responsibilities. And what that meant for me was any American that got kidnapped anywhere in the world, it was my job to come up with a negotiation strategy that would get them out safely, and then ideally in a way that we'd bring the bad guys to justice too.
How did you get into that? It's so niche.
Yeah, one left turn after another. I mean, I pursued stuff that I found really interesting and intriguing, and also if the people around it, were kind of like my tribe, my people, shared my core values. And so, a purposeful mission with people that I enjoyed working with. And my kind of person is figured out, like in my company, we describe it as a Midwestern United States work ethic, roll up your sleeves, blue collar, help the team, and, have fun at the same time, be very good natured about it. And those people were around the job that I thought would be enjoyable. It worked out for me.
So I'm really curious to understand what it was like being a hostage or kidnapping negotiator. What did you learn about human behavior?
Yeah, slowly but surely, human behavior is pretty much the same. And I've really learned that more since I left the FBI. Like when I got into hostage negotiation, they first said, look, you don't have any background, any qualifications, so the only way you could do this is to volunteer on a crisis hotline. So I did. We didn't know it at the time, but it was just learning emotional intelligence with people theoretically under stress. But then I learned and I thought, this stuff's so good. It's just got to apply in everyday life. I mean, empathy, why should you only apply empathy to somebody who's under stress? So I started applying it in everyday life, and then it became a big part of even kidnap bargaining, bail knuckle brass tacks bargaining. The people on the other side are pretty much driven by What does this mean to them as a human being? How is their identity involved, and what kind of loss have they suffered that's driven them to this horrific behavior? And then, those are the rules of hostage negotiation. And then about 2002, Daniel Kahneman won the Nobel Prize in behavioral economics for saying, like, yeah, loss pretty much drives everybody in their thinking. It's not the only thing, but it's just the biggest driver. That's when I really began to learn that the stuff we learned in hostage negotiation is just human behavior.
So loss and empathy are two important things, but can you talk to me about the mental strategy that you go through when you're trying to negotiate out of a situation, obviously a hostage situation, but any situation which seems like an impossible situation?
Well, if everything you deal with seems impossible, then that isn't that hard. Like I used to say, everything we're doing was a long shot. Well, if my chances are slim or none, I'll take slim. And you just get used to slim. It doesn't rattle you. And then you begin to realize that you can start making subtle differences. And few things really are long shots. Few are. Some are. You got to learn the difference. But if you just get into it, if you're not afraid of working without a net or it being a long shot, then the stuff comes to you. I think the biggest thing that I learned, I repeated this phrase a lot. I learned it from my boss: best chance of success. Well, best chance of success by definition means that not everything is going to work out. And if you accept that, and that you just want to do the thing that's most likely to work out, then you get a lot better.
What about the pressure in that situation? Because we're going to talk a bit about the business side of things and the skills being transferable, but this is serious. This isn't just losing, some money. This is like losing a human being. So how do you handle the pressure? You're the lead guy.
Yeah, you get used to it a little at a time.
Really? Can you?
It's kind of the boiling frog analogy. There's the metaphor of you can't drop a frog into boiling water, but you can put them in room temperature water and slowly raise the temperature, and they can adapt and adjust. In the training, they hit us right between the eyes early on in the training with a scenario that went bad unexpectedly. And it was very purposeful to be like, let's not kid ourselves. These are dangerous situations. And if you accept that early on, and you should, then you're like, all right, so I got to be prepared to get into something that's kind of heavy. And if you talk about it theoretically, when it really happens, it's still really hard to deal with, but you were warned. And people are incredibly resilient with warning. It's people getting caught off guard by stressors that are the real problem. So, I paid attention to the warnings. People told me stuff and I listened. I believe what they said. And so that, that's just kind of how you deal with it. You think about it theoretically, which prepares for you to deal with it in reality.
So sort of preparing for the worst case scenario and any things that could pop up.
Yeah, being aware that it could happen. Among, I read a lot of other stuff. One of the things I like reading a lot, Eric Barker writes a blog called Barking Up the Wrong Tree. I think Eric's a brilliant guy. I read his stuff, very layman oriented. He wrote a long time ago about preparation for tragedy. He used the samurai analogy. He said, the samurai dealt with death because they thought about it as a possibility. They just simply accepted it was one of a number of possible outcomes. So they were warned, and it was not the outcome, but a possible outcome. And they lost their fear of death just because they thought it through. I'm coaching a kidnapping a number of years ago, and the brother who saved his brother's life, I'm coaching a brother of the victim. He took our coaching. He was very coachable. He listened so well, he even made some stuff up on his own within what we taught him.
Nice.
And afterwards, I said, man, like you are coachable. You were phenomenal. I said, how is that you were this good? And he said, I realized early on that my brother could die. and that it was a possible outcome. And I thought, all right, so I'm aware of this. Let me engage and do my best. And I really thought that was similar to the samurai analogy. You're not caught up that it's the only outcome, but it's an outcome. And when you see that as one of a number of possibilities, you're much more flexible.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you remember your most challenging hostage negotiation?
Well, it would have been probably one of two. I mean, the second case of work in the Philippines, the Burnham-Sabero case, came right on the heels of a case previously that went magnificently. We got the hostage out. The hostage walked away. No ransom was paid. And the bad guy's organization was left pretty much in a shambles as a result. Another kidnapping kicked off just about a month after that one with a different branch of the franchise, if you will. Everything's an organization. An organizational structure is the same. And terrorist groups are organizations, and they get different franchises, different branches of the franchise. And that one was a mess from beginning to end. The biggest problem was coordinating the government entities, because we've been so successful previously, they felt less under crisis. So, they didn't collaborate as well as we should have across the board. And it was between the U.S. government, a little bit of disorganization, and the Philippine government disorganization. The crisis within the crisis was much worse than dealing with the bad guys was. And that thing, it had a number of melancholy outcomes. A number of people, unfortunately, didn't make it through.
In terms of everything that you learned, you're now obviously teaching business negotiation, which is fascinating. So how and why are the skills transferable?
Yeah, because, human decision-making under stress still follows kind of the same rules. And there's a phrase, your biggest problem is your biggest problem. Like in the business world, people are negotiating because their livelihoods depend on it. And so they have a tendency to get as emotionally invested as it would otherwise, because it's the most stressful thing in their life at the time. And human decision-making is really, what's the loss? I mean, it's really interesting that people calculate what they're losing and figure that out before they think about what they're gaining. I remember hearing a friend of mine, and I don't know the source of the statistic, but she really knows business, and she said 70% of buy decisions are made to avoid a loss instead of accomplishing a gain.
That's interesting.
And that ratio is about right, because there's a 2-to-1 impact pretty much of loss over gain. And when you can grasp that, and you, instead of selling, if somebody doesn't agree with you, you've got to understand they see a loss differently than what you see. And you need to sort of get in their head by invitation, with tactical empathy, actual empathy, not pretend empathy, and tell them what you think their perspective is, and let them correct you. And then you got an opportunity, since you're in there, you have a relationship or rapport by invitation, you might be able to get them to change their mind.
So I want to get into that. Can you give me an example? What do you mean by empathy? Because I've heard you talk a lot about getting people to say that's right. You call it TR. Say you're in say you're trying to negotiate a salary. This is relevant right now. Inflation is soaring. Salaries aren't reflecting that. So somebody wants to approach their boss, and you're talking about empathy, and you're talking about getting them to say that's right. What does that actually look like?
All right. So from your boss's perspective, what does your boss want? Somebody who's a team player, someone who follows direction, someone who gets their ego out of the way. That's what any boss wants.
Yeah.
You start by saying that. Look, you're looking for a team player. You're looking for somebody that's not a diva. You're looking for somebody that has integrity and guidance and is trustworthy. I mean, because they want to know that you're aware of that. And no one knows that you're aware until you say it out loud. It's one of the real big two biggest misunderstandings about empathy. Number one, empathy equates to sympathy. It does not. A friend of mine, Stephen Kotler, said empathy is about the transmission of information. Compassion is the reaction to the transmission.
Mm.
So you can have complete empathy with someone, and it's a precursor for compassion, but it doesn't necessarily need compassion to have empathy. It's not agreement. It's not a liking. It's not sympathy. It's being fully aware of the other side's perspective. So problem one is people equate it to sympathy, and it's not. People equate it to compassion, agreement. It's not. It's none of those things. It's very neutral. So the problem two is you got to tell them what you think their perspective is, because you don't know that you've got it right until you check with them.
Okay.
And give them the opportunity to correct you. Just seeing it from their point of view is step one, and it's inadequate alone. You got to feedback what you're looking for. If you feed back to the boss the very things that I said before, you're looking for somebody that's a team player. You're looking for somebody that takes direction well. And what's going to happen when you give them what you think their perspective is, whatever you've left out, they're going to add in, which is critical information. Like if the boss is really looking for somebody who works well alone, then when you say you're looking for a team player, the boss is going to say, yeah, but I need you to work well alone. Like that's great information. That's exactly what you were looking for.
Yeah.
What you've left out that's important to them, they will add in. So then you repeat it back to them, and that's when you're driving for that's right. Now, what happens when you get the magic that's right? When people feel fully understood. And this is stuff we just learned in the last couple of years, neuroscience. What's the neuroscience? When you feel completely understood, you get a hit of two of your own neurochemicals that work wonders. Oxytocin, which is the bonding drug. So when you feel understood, you feel bonded to me. We got rapport. Mm-hmm. You're giving me influence. It's more than even like me. I mean, you like me and you feel bonded to me. Now, another crazy thing that I ran across recently on oxytocin, it inclines you to tell the truth. Ooh. So not only do you like me, you feel bonded to me, you're going to be more honest with me. Ooh, that sounds like a good business relationship. Now, the kicker, you also get a hit of serotonin. Serotonin is a drug of satisfaction, which means suddenly you're less greedy and you're more giving. So in a negotiation, you're bonded to me, you like me, you're more likely to be honest, and you want to take less, you want to grab less in the deal, you'll be satisfied with just the interaction. I have to give up less. I mean, what more do you want from the mere act of making somebody feel understood?
So this is the boss. The boss feels this way when you say that, right?
The boss or any human being. I mean, this applies to any human being, but yes, it applies to the boss. There's some other things you're going to want to make sure of with the boss, but they all pretty much revolve around whether or not you're a team player instead of a diva who's only selfish. Like, I need to get paid more. That's selfish.
Yeah.
I want to make the team better. Oh, maybe that's not so selfish. That benefits everybody. What behaviors are you going to engage in to make the team better that's going to make life better for the boss? Bosses, employers, whether we as employees like it or not, essentially see employees mostly as selfish. When do you walk into the boss's office? When you want something. What do you talk about in a job negotiation? Stuff for you. What do you talk about in the annual review? Stuff for you. I mean, look at all the feedback that employers get about employees being selfish. When you start coming in and ask a different question, the magic question is that every employee should ask in their job interviews and in every annual performance review. How can I be guaranteed to be involved in projects that are critical to the strategic future of this organization?
What a question.
I was doing a keynote speech, 8-10 months ago. CEO of a sales organization and all his top salespeople. And we did the Q&A, and one of the salespeople said, how do we negotiate with our boss? What do we say? You know, and you could just feel the tension in the air. Like, because the boss is there listening to this. What's he going to say without making the boss mad? Because the boss is paying this guy to be here.
Yeah.
What's he going to say that's going to help us? And I said, this is what you ask. How can I be guaranteed to be involved in projects critical to the strategic future of the organization? I said, you ask that, and you are going to get better projects. You're going to get the boss's attention because the boss sees you as a team player, and you're either going to deliver more value and get paid more, or you're going to deliver more value and shop your resume because of the great things you did and go elsewhere if the boss won't pay you. And as soon as I finished that explanation, the CEO said, I wish everyone in my organization would ask me this.
Yeah, I'm sure. And
it's about you getting paid more and having a better resume so that your life has more accomplishment and achievement in it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people definitely approach jobs, you know, based on what can you do for me, you know, what's the pay? Is there medical insurance? You know, it always lacks that, you know, how can I offer value? But outside of the negotiation between a boss and employee, you know, you talk about negotiations in general, and there's something about yes and no questions. Can you explain that to me?
I mean, a Black Swan Group is out of the yes business. If you're learning a Black Swan method, we are out of the yes business. We used to say yes is nothing without how, and now we say yes is nothing and how is everything.
What does that mean?
Now, well, first of all, what's the problem with yes? The first problem is you think yes is success. 9 out of 10 yeses are counterfeit. So if you think yes is success, you got a counterfeit yes, and you're in a completely different ballpark than the other person, because they gave you a counterfeit yes because they want you to keep talking. They gave you a counterfeit yes to see where you're going, but they're leery of where the traps are. And there's always a hook buried in yes. Do you want to make more money? Do you want to live in a bigger house? Do you want to travel the world, stay in 5-star hotels for free? Do you want free hotel upgrades? You know, those are all yes-oriented questions. And if I was trying to get you to buy my book, because you can learn all those things from Never Split the Difference. But if I were to do it like that, you'd be like, there's a hook coming here. This guy's trying to sell me something. He's, you know, he's got an agenda. So I'll say yes because I want to know where it's going. Now, people that are engaged in this yes nonsense think they're on the right track. It doesn't even occur to them that they're getting a fake yes. You know, classic example in sales or in business is if you're being played against another competitor and you don't even know it. You're the fool in the game. You're the rabbit. You're driving down the price. They're looking at you because they want to kick the tires or free consulting or competing bid. The question that some sales books tell people to say is, are we the vendor of choice? There's no way they're not going to say yes to that. They'd be stupid if they didn't.
Yeah.
When in most 8 out of 10 times you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't know who the fool in the game is, it's probably you. If you're the favorite, you know you're the favorite. So if you don't know you're the favorite, and you're wondering who the fool is, who's being played, it's you. Well, you ask them a yes-oriented question, they're going to lie to you. They're going to give you the counterfeit yes. So yes isn't success, which means that no, by definition, is not failure. I mean, probably one of the most critical turning points in every negotiator's career is understanding what yes and no really is.
Okay.
Yes is at best is aspiration only. That's why it's nothing without how. And more than likely it's counterfeit. No, on the other hand, when somebody says it, not when you hear it, but what happens when somebody says it? They feel safe. They feel protected. They're no longer worried about a hook. Even something as little as nobody in my company ever says, have you got a few minutes to talk? Nobody that we've trained and who understood ever says, have you got a few minutes to talk? The question is always, is now a bad time? Is
now a bad time. Okay. So what are they going to say? No.
You're going to get one of 3 responses. They're going to say, no, go ahead. because they felt safe and in control in that moment.
Because you gave them an opening to leave.
Yeah, you preserved their autonomy.
Mm.
You know, for sort of a philosophical, metaphysical description of it.
Yeah.
You know, people will die to preserve their autonomy, their freedom.
Yeah.
That's a human nature aspect. Now, understanding what you say after that, you know, a no-oriented question buys you about 30 to 60 seconds. What you follow it up with is very important. But we say it's now a bad time to talk. No, it's never a bad time. Or they might come back with, yeah, it is a bad time. I'm on a Zoom call right now. I'll call you in 30 minutes. That's exactly what I got on that no-oriented question that somebody had texted the other day. Because I need their attention. Like, I could have rang this guy up. He would have answered the phone while he was on a Zoom call.
Mm-hmm.
And I might have thought, since he answered, I could talk to him without really realizing he's on a Zoom call. He's going to be completely distracted between the two.
Yeah.
I don't need divided attention. I do need to know when I can talk to him. And if there's an opportunity in the near term for them to talk to you, they'll tell you when, which now means they've agreed to the conversation and when it's going to happen. And again, you've got their full attention and they feel their autonomy is safe. Now, the third tricky answer is silence. Like 1 in 100 times is now a bad time to talk is met with silence. It's probably overall the highest percentage success of any of the Black Swan skills. You get silence, the answer is yes. And there's stuff going on here now. I'm struggling. I'm drowning. I don't want to talk to you because either I've got bad news or I've got no news. That's actually good information to know that the other person probably feels backed into a corner at the moment. You shoot out the text message, is now a bad time to talk, and you get silence over an hour. Shoot, the empathy response is, you're probably under a lot of pressure right now.
Mm.
You probably feel really backed into a corner right now. Now, they still may not respond, but that's not the point. The point is, what do they feel when they read that? They feel understood. They feel appreciated. You're starting to kick in those neurochemicals that I was talking about before that play to your advantage long term. So the whole yes-no dynamic from the Black Swan method is completely different than you'll learn anywhere else. And I can tell you, if you can just simply master that difference, it's a low estimate that all your success rates are going to improve by 23%. You've just given yourself a 23% increase in pay.
Just to clarify, what's the difference between saying is now a bad time versus is now a good time? Is now a good time in the corner? That's a yes response question.
Well, what goes through somebody's mind is now a good time to talk, or have you got a few minutes to talk? Here's what goes through their mind. Depends upon what you want to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I might not want to talk about what you want to talk about. I like talking to you. I just don't want to talk about what you want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
How long is a few minutes? You know, there's a whole separate problem with a few minutes. It's usually 45.
Yes.
Like, nobody knows how long a few minutes is. Like, I can't commit to that. I don't know how long a few minutes are. Is now a bad time to talk? No, it's not a bad time, but I got 15 minutes is the answer. You just cleared up the whole time frame. Or no, it's not a bad time, but I'm on a Zoom call. I can talk to you in 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
The real issue is, how do they respond to the question? How much gets cleared up right away? And the mere act of saying no makes people feel safe. So there's less anxiety in their response, and they can think through it much more clearly.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I do that a lot. I say no to bring back my autonomy. Like, if I'm uncomfortable, I'm just like, okay, now it's just a clear no. And then we can go from there. Like, we can work from, I've said no, now I don't owe anyone anything, and now we can build. So
exactly, because you protected yourself.
Yes.
Now I can talk without any implied commitment.
Yes.
And the implied commitment is a real problem with people that are into this yes nonsense. They call it momentum selling, or the yes momentum. When they teach it, they say each yes is actually a tied down. Nobody likes to get tied down. Nobody likes to get cornered. Nobody likes implied commitments. And that's what the whole yes momentum nonsense is all about. You know, you're trying to tie somebody down. You're trying to hook them. You're trying to trap them. You're trying to corner them. So they're implied commitments. When the other person is not prepared and doesn't like implied commitments.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. How do you then deal with getting a no? I watched a video actually of yours. I can't remember. I think maybe it was a Google talk, maybe. And the girl was saying she asked for some chairs and they said no. And then she got the chairs in the end. So how do you negotiate when somebody originally just says no, whether it's, I can't increase your salary, or no, we can't pay you that much, or just a simple no, this won't work for us.
Well, and bringing it back around to salary is a really good idea, because salary only pays your bills. It doesn't make your career.
Right.
Like most people assume, like, you pay me a lot of money, I'm going to be a superstar and my career is going to be made because I'm getting paid a lot and I'm incentivized and I'll do fantastic. And that is not the case. I mean, people say that, and simultaneously, all human beings say money's not a motivator. So salary doesn't make your career. Salary pays your bills.
Yes.
Now, low salary can break the deal, but you're not going to be guaranteed to become successful based on your salary. You need to know the lay of the land. You need to know what they think it takes to become successful. You need to know what are their expectations of you, which are all non-salary terms about success that you need to know for your job. Like, are they expecting you to be completely autonomous? Do they really need somebody who's completely autonomous? To be completely autonomous and a team player, that's kind of tricky. How do you work that out? Is that what they're looking for? What do they mean by those terms? Like in my company, one of our core values, we used to say being a team player. Mm-hmm. There isn't anybody on earth that's going to say, I'm not a team player.
Yeah.
The real difference is, do they want to be a member of a team, or do they want to lead the team?
Yes.
Do they want to support the team, or do they want the team to support them? Do they want to join your team? They want you to join their team? I mean, I turned down a retired FBI hostage negotiator because he wanted his own organization. He was willing to work with us. And I finally said to him, like, look, the fact of the matter is, you want us to join your team. You don't want to join our team. And he went dead silent. The fit wasn't there. Mm-hmm. So we no longer say team players. We say team first. Mm-hmm. Now that's different. Now you may not have heard that properly, but if we run into problems later on, we very clearly said that up front. We say things like, inaction is a bigger sin than a mistake. And the biggest sin of all is to learn from your mistakes. Mm-hmm. You know, what does that mean? We need you to take action. I don't expect it to be perfect. When you make a mistake, you can probably make it 2, maybe 3 times. You make it 7, 8, 9 times, you're not learning. You know, in my company, for us to push the envelope, for us to get better, for us to stay ahead of everybody, which we are, we got to make mistakes and learn from them. That's one of the reasons why our method continues to get better than anybody else's, because we walk our own talk. You know, we negotiate for a living. We negotiate for our bread, if you will, you know, for our food. And we need to have long-term relationships, because if you cheat people in negotiations, if you fail to deliver, you don't got customers anymore. So we walk our talk on a regular basis, and we understand what it takes and what we ask of people to be a successful member of our team. As an employee, you got to figure that out. Otherwise, it's a bad fit.
But what happens when you're speaking with somebody and they say to you, you know, this is how much we'll pay you, and you know that's not going to work. You know, it's a no. So how do you navigate a no, though?
Well, first of all, you know, what else is going with the job is the real issue. Can you build your career here? Like, take the most successful business person that anybody could think of. I don't know who you think of. I'm thinking of either Warren Buffett or Oprah Winfrey, 2 of my favorites.
Okay.
Like I'd go be Warren Buffett's personal assistant for $15 an hour. And I make a lot more than that now. But I would get rid of all of it for a year to be his assistant and learn from him. Well, Oprah Winfrey, same thing. I'd go be her personal assistant for a year for $15 an hour. So what are you getting with the job? Is the salary really what's breaking the deal, or are the future prospects what's breaking the deal? A friend of mine is a head of an international bank. He's famous for paying people at market or slightly less and retaining them for longer than anybody else in his industry. Now, how is he not paying people high and simultaneously retaining them? His focus is on helping them build their lives, and not just their professional lives, like their personal lives. Like when he says to you, what do you really want out of life? What do you really, really want? And if they say, yeah, I want to build log cabins in the woods. So he'll say, all right, so how do we integrate you learning about that into your job?
That's nice.
How long is it going to take you to learn about that? Well, I got to study log cabin building for 4 years. All right, so let's figure out a way to integrate that into your job here so that you can be successful at work and still fulfill your life's ambition.
That's powerful.
But he's just now got that person for 4 years. And they're not quitting in a year or two. Or they're not shopping in 3. What's a typical turnover in many jobs? A long time ago, it used to be to 2-3 years max, and you started shopping employers because you need to go someplace else because they're not giving you a raise and your life isn't moving forward. That's how he retains people. It's what goes with the job. He actually cares about you. Your employer-employee relationship is a marriage. And if your counterpart doesn't care about you growing and blossoming as a human being, personally and professional, it's the wrong job. Find somebody who does want that for you.
That's really powerful. When it comes to negotiation, there's obviously this sort of fair value of exchange, which you have to figure out. So how do you navigate understanding, whether you're asking for too much, or whether they're asking for too much from you? Like, how do you understand whether this is fair for both parties?
Well, yeah, fair is like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder.
Very true.
And, and there's also some, what if they can't afford to pay you top dollar? But the experience of being there is going to be like no other experience. Like, what if you're in a startup operation? It still has to go several funding rounds. And you know nothing about funding. Like I've never solicited funding. I was in a conversation last night with a guy who was getting ready to raise. His plan is to raise $8 million, and building out the business plan. And what does that look like? And building the business case. And I thought, wow, I don't know anything about that stuff. Like if I came to work for you now and I learned all that in the coming year, if I knew how to raise $8 million, if I knew how to build a business case, I'd go out and start my own business. Or it might qualify me to be a strategic thinker in somebody else's business that needs to do the same thing. What would I work for? I would to gain that kind of knowledge on building businesses and finances. I'd work for less doing that. So really, what's it going to do for your life? You do want to find out whether or not they're lowballing you or whether or not they just don't have the ability to pay. Now, there's questions like that. What's their process? Their process in advance is they got a range for your salary. They got latitude within that range. And they have the ability, if you can make the case, to go outside that range. So how do you articulate with that? You say, well, you probably got a range for my salary. You probably dropped me into a couple of different job descriptions. And you're trying to see exactly where I fit. That's the most successful both for the company and for you, because you're going to be held accountable for what kind of a deal that we cut. So you start asking for people about ranges, they're more likely to open up. Now, one of my students at Georgetown several years ago was in a job negotiation. And I said, ask them a series of questions where the answer is no every time.
Ooh, that's so hard.
And it's to your benefit every time they say no. And that might be, do you want to recruit an unqualified person for this position?
Good
do you want
one.
to recruit somebody who's going to fail? Do you want me to fail? Do you want me to be so anxious about my salary that I can't perform well? Are you against me building my career? So he spent some time thinking about all the things that he would like to get him to say yes to, switched it to a no-oriented question. What's a yes question? Do you want me to be successful? The no question is, do you want me to fail? I've never had we've counseled people to ask bosses that across the planet.
Yeah.
And nobody's ever pushed back.
Of course.
So this guy came up with 12 no-oriented questions. They came back with a salary that was so much higher than their original offer.
Wow.
That the interview committee had to actually go back to the CFO to get approval for the salary.
I need to do that. That is so interesting. I've been incorporating a lot of these things, but I think that's something that I don't put enough emphasis on, actually, the no orientated questions. So I'm going to put more emphasis on that.
It's huge. I mean, it's the only downside to it is it will make such a difference in your effectiveness that you'll forget to learn the other stuff.
There you go. It's like when you're starting to learn to drive. Well, in the UK anyway, because we drive manual. It's difficult. You have to do a bunch of different things all at once, and then it all becomes automatic. Obviously, I saw as well. You talk about negotiation tips for women, which is interesting, and I want to get to that. But before I do you think that men and women are different when it comes to negotiating? Like, is one sex better than the other? Give me your honest opinion. I don't take any offense on this show. It's very non-PC. We're good.
Well, I'm gonna answer yes and no. And
okay.
Yeah, I know I sound like a politician. So women pick the Black Swan method up faster than men do. I mean, it's empathy based, not sympathy, but empathy, and it's listening based.
Yeah.
Now, at the top performer end, gender makes no difference.
Okay.
Like, if you study it, if you're coachable, if you're willing to learn, then gender completely falls away. What we've seen, and I think it's more of a nurture than nature thing, because when you start talking about gender differences or any differences, it's really, is it nature versus nurture? I mean, we're all kind of born the same blank slate. Now, typically across the globe, boys are nurtured to fight sooner. Females are nurtured to communicate sooner. Now, even though males and females up to adolescence are pretty much exactly the same size, physical capabilities, 10-year-olds, you get them a bunch of 10-year-olds together for a sport, the girls are going to be every bit as physically capable as the boys. The girls are going to undergo a growth spurt 2 or 3 years before the boys do, 12, 13, 14. They're all going to be a head taller than the boys. The boys are going to catch up and pass them physically. Knowing this is coming, women globally know that ultimately the females in their society are going to be physically weaker than the men. So they need to know the soft skills sooner. They start getting coached on it from the very beginning. So the coaching for soft skills and listening and understanding is given to women sooner than it's given to men, generally speaking. You might not like that this is true, but if you want to look at the data, it's inarguable that regardless of the society, that's true. No matter how enlightened the society is, that tends to be the case. So women get a head start on listening and understanding, and they get more of a head start on sympathy. But if you can make the transition from sympathy to empathy, you pick it up faster. So that's why I believe is the main reason why women pick this up faster than men. But then at the top end, there's no difference in a gender. You're either good at it or not. Doesn't that make any difference whether you're a man or a woman?
The reason I ask is because don't you think women tend to be, again, everything's a generalization, but do you think women stereotypically tend to be more agreeable and less likely to take risk, whereas men would be more disagreeable, more likely to take risk? And so when it comes to negotiating, a man is more likely to say, actually, no, that's not going to work for me, and is more likely to risk losing the opportunity.
Likelihood and why are two separate issues. And in the middle of the bell curve, the D players to the B minus players, the men are more encouraged among their peers to take the risk.
Right.
What's your social feedback? What are your examples around you? Basically, still, the workplace is majority male. So the men have more examples of people being aggressive. The women don't have fewer examples. Now, most of these are examples of bad negotiation, but it still doesn't mean that's not most of the examples that are out there. I also think that women are more aware of the long-term negative impact of being aggressive and have developed a sense that long-term it's a bad strategy. It looks good short-term, but it really tends to be bad long-term.
Bad in what way?
The more aggressive you are, the more feelings and negativity you leave behind you, the more people want to hurt you in return. Okay. It's a great way to accumulate enemies, burn bridges, destroy relationships.
Yes.
It's a great way for long-term failure.
Yeah.
And I think women sense this quicker, and they say, all right, so I may not gain in the short term here. I may lose value short term, but long term, I'm seeing this aggressive guy ultimately being hated by everybody. And I'm not sure I want to go there. Something about that bothers me. I don't think my long-term success is there. And men are more celebrated for being aggressive, and it's not pointed out to them how badly it's damaging them long term. And then at some point in time, they either wake up or they fail and they have to go someplace else.
That's so fascinating. I personally have men to negotiate for me because I don't like to be aggressive. Like I can be if necessary, but I physically don't like the energy that it puts me in. Does that make sense?
It makes all the sense in the world, and it's why we train people to be assertive and not aggressive.
But I think even being assertive requires a certain level of, whether it's like masculine energy or something like that. I'm not sure.
I think it can be a learned behavior, and it's where you're coming from with your assertion. Like, for example, you sound to me like somebody who's not trying to take away from the other side, that wants to make a good deal with people.
Yes.
So if you don't lay out for them clearly what you need, which is assertion, then you're making them guess, which is bad long-term. Like, to be assertive gently, politely, respectfully, even deferentially, you're actually doing the other side a favor, because otherwise you're making them guess as to what you really want, which means, the correlation of success there is diminishing with guesswork, as opposed to saying, using a little empathy. If you're assertive, how are you worried about coming across? You're worried that maybe you're being self-centered and greedy. We like to teach people, before you say this, what do you want to deny? To make a 2 millimeter shift from going from what do you want to deny to just calling it out. You're afraid they're going to think that you're self-centered and greedy. The wrong way would be to say, I don't want to seem self-centered and greedy. That's a denial. The right way would be, I'm probably going to seem self-centered and greedy. Here's what I need to make a great deal with you.
That's
One
interesting.
of our rules in a Black Swan, when we make deals with people, we never want there to be any doubt in the other side's mind what it would take to make a great deal with us.
Right.
If they choose to walk away, they're going to walk away fully informed. And we don't say, I have to have this. We say, look, it's okay if you can't do this. We completely understand why you would walk away, why you would have other priorities. But to make a great deal with us, here's what we got to have, or we go our separate ways, no hard feelings. I've always coached my people in my business development team, don't ever let anybody walk away from us, or don't ever walk away from anybody unless you're sure they know what we need. And then if we part company, everybody's fully informed and everybody made a good decision.
Speaking of walking away, what do you do when you feel like you may not have any leverage? So, say you're, I don't know, you're working for yourself and you don't have many clients 1 month or whatever it is. And, you kind of need the business, but you can't get the money that you want. So you don't have that leverage. It's not like, oh, well, if you won't pay me, that's fine. I have a bunch of other clients.
Yeah, well, first of all, you can become a hostage to the short term. That's a really easy thing to do because once you're there, you never get out of it, ever. I got to pay the bills. I got to pay the bills. I got to make rent this month. I'm barely making rent this month. I mean, you never get out of the short-term mindset. So you got to really work on the 6-month mindset or the long-term mindset. Now, leverage in a deal. You got a business. You really need the deal. What the other person really needs is somebody that can rely on over a long time. If you're delivering what you say you're going to deliver, replacing you is going to be very expensive. Now, you may need to point this out to them because many people are in a best price mindset. I mean, how do you deal with someone who's looking to drive the price down overall? Ask a how question. How do we make this deal and put me in a position where I'm your long-term vendor that always delivers what you need? And I don't go out of business and you don't have to replace me every 3 months. Because this gets us back to the prospect of loss. I talked about before, Danny Kahneman's Nobel Prize win over behavior economics. Lost things twice as much as an equivalent gain. Replacing you every 2 months is expensive and difficult. And if you can deliver the product, then the chances that they'll replace you with someone who can't deliver are very high. It's like having a good tenant in your apartment. The next tenant might not keep the place clean. Then the next tenant might be loud. Then the next tenant might always pay the rent on time, but they trash the place so badly that you're going to have to put thousands upon thousands of dollars into it when you kick them out.
Yeah.
I mean, vendor, client, customer relationships are very much the same. If you're delivering, it's far more expensive to replace you with someone who doesn't deliver than it is to pay you more. That's the logic of it.
That makes
That's,
sense.
for lack of a better term, the leverage. And I don't like the word leverage. I like influence.
Okay.
You got to shift them into long-term thinking. How do we do this so you don't got to replace me every 2 months? That puts a loss in their head without you making the threat. You want them to think about what's the problem with replacing you. It's cheaper to pay you so that you can make a living than it is to replace you, because there's also downtime between replacing you. So use empathy and a how question to get them to shift their thinking.
So my final question for you is, how do people prepare themselves when going into a negotiation?
The best thing is to be curious about what might happen. Curiosity is a superpower.
Okay.
There's a guy that wrote a book called Anti-Fragile, which means that you thrive from negative events. You don't just survive. You don't get knocked off your feet. Problems, negative events, trauma. You actually grow from it.
Mm-hmm.
Curiosity is one of those terms. You're 31% smarter in a positive frame of mind. Curiosity is highly positive. Preparing for the negotiations most people want to think what they want to get out of the negotiation, what they're afraid might happen. Those are two possibilities. Think of 5, right? So maybe they'll give me some of what I want. What are they likely to give me? As soon as you start thinking of more than 2 possible outcomes, now you're curious and you're open to the possibilities that will present themselves in the negotiation. And there are always better possibilities. Your challenge is, how do I find them? If you're curious, you're also easy to talk to. When you're curious, you're positive, you're pleasant, you're interested. The other side is more likely to reveal stuff to you to help you make a better deal. So when we've got a block of instruction we call caviar, which is an acronym, and the C in caviar is curiosity. There's a number of other things in there to help you get your mind right in front of a negotiation. But if you can just be curious, you'll be in good shape.
So if you take anything away from this conversation, guys, it should be curiosity. Curiosity. It's a superpower. Chris, I want to thank you so much for coming on. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. Can I give some clues out if anybody's curious?
Yes, I was just about to say. Yeah. Guys will obviously want to come follow you. So where can people follow you? Tell us about your book.
All right. So the book is Never Split the Difference.
Yep.
It's still the top-selling business negotiation book on earth in all cultures. It sells well in China. It sells well in Pakistan. It sells well in India. It's cross-cultural success because we all belong to the same culture of human beings. So never split the difference. Now, a lot of people get a long way on never split the difference and then just subscribe to our newsletter. Because the newsletter is free and it's concise and it's actionable. How do you subscribe? The website is blackswanltd.com, BLACKSWANLTD.com. Upper right-hand corner of the newsletter is a tab for, it's also known as the blog. Click on that, subscribe. It's free, but really it's concise and it's actionable. We'll ask you for your email and we'll send you an email on Tuesday morning, wherever you are in the world. It's calculated to give it to you early Tuesday morning, give you good food for thought so you can negotiate well that week. Do those 2 things, you're going to get better.
Chris, if you send me some links, I can put them in the description after the show. So I can put everything in the description below, the links to everything, the Black Swan Group and everything. I can put them all in the description below. You also have a YouTube channel. You'd also have a YouTube channel, Black Swan Group. So guys, please go follow Chris on YouTube. I'll also put that in the links in the description below. And are you active on Twitter? I saw you on Twitter, but I'm not sure if you're active.
I'm a lot more on Instagram than I am on Twitter. You know, that Twitter stuff comes out when it's linked to something I put up on Instagram.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, all the information will be in the description below and the book, Never Split the Difference. So I want to thank you so much for coming on. It's been really valuable, especially, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, inflation is high, unemployment is high, and, pretty tough times. So people need to know how to negotiate a better situation for themselves.
That's right.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for coming on. Thank you everyone for watching, and we will see you all next week. Bye-bye.
The Layah Heilpern Show.